If you want to hear the real difference and the similarities between living in California and Orlando, then this is the video for you. And stay tuned till the end, and I'll give you my number one difference that I have found between living in both places. Let's go. What's up, everyone? My name is Cameron Hodge. I am a realtor here in Orlando, and this is your first time coming to the channel. Please like and subscribe if you want to learn about living, eating, and breathing in Orlando, Florida. And we always have so many people from around the world reaching out to help them relocate to Orlando. And if that's you and you need help, feel free to reach out, call, text, email. I don't care what you have to do, reach out. And we just absolutely love helping everyone when it comes to moving to Orlando, Florida. In this video, we're gonna talk about the biggest differences I found between living in California and Orlando. And also stay tuned to the end, like I said, and we will give you the number one thing that I found when it came to living in both places and the difference that it made in our lives and what it could make for yours. So out that, let's get going. Number one. So one of the biggest things that anyone's gonna notice between living in both places is the weather, right? So when, if you're living in California, and I did it for a number of years, you're gonna understand, everyone loves to say the California weather is just amazing, it's beautiful, yada, yada, all this stuff that we hear all the time. And it is beautiful weather. But I mean, if you're like me and you're weird, you're already looking at leaving, then you kind of get a little torn up about the weather, like it never rains. I grew up in a place, not in California, but where I grew up initially in New York, you had different weather. And I don't know about you, but perfect weather, it gets a little boring. It's, call me weird. No shame here. It's just, it gets boring to me. Like, I love to see some kind of weather and toss it up to where it's just not the same every day. So, coming to Orlando, one of the few things that we had to get used to was the fact that, let's say, during the summer months, it rains and thunderstorms every afternoon. I won't forget when, we came out here in our first trip to visit, to get a feel of the area, feel what it was like. We had gotten an Airbnb around the rough area we were going to live, and it had a pool. So naturally, having kids, we wanted to spend the days in the pool because, it's hot, it's like 90, it's humid, which we'll get that to in a second. And we're enjoying the pool, and out of nowhere, it's 1 p.m. and it starts thundering and lightning and raining. And it's not so much the rain, but you're not going to be in a pool when it's lightning. And we had to learn real quick that, wow, we really have to schedule our day to do some nicer things in the morning. In reality, the mornings, a lot of the times, we found that initial discovery trip, we were able to do outside things because the heat hadn't hit the peak of the day. And it wasn't raining, it was sunny, it was beautiful out, really, to me. And we learned very quick that when you're enjoying kids in a pool and you have a 1-year-old at the time and a 4-year-old who want to swim, you get to take them inside, it's not so much fun. So that's something to note of coming here is in Orlando, you really have to structure your days around that weather. And you all of a sudden have to realize that when you flip on the news or go into your phone, you're like, wow, I have to start using this weather app that I'm not so much used to using at all, ever. And if, you're not from California, you get to laugh at all of those of us who got used to really doing whatever we wanted because the weather was always going to cooperate 9 out of 10 times, unless it was January. So that's something to take note of. Also, if you have never lived in humidity before, that's also a fun one where you get to, go outside and, you may have just showered 20 minutes ago and you get to realize, wow, I might as well go swimming because I'm already soaked. It is what it is. And it's one of those things where during the winter, it gets a lot better. So if you've never lived in humidity, and you don't know what it is. Thankfully, I had some experience. My wife had lived in Alabama for a year, in her previous life. So we understood what we were getting into. But if you don't understand, you really need to make a trip during the summer and understand what the worst is going to be. But at the same time, I swear 9 out of 10 people I talk to from California, they have only ever visited in the summer. So you have to be able to get out here and experience the winter, because the winter is really where Florida shines, and you start to understand why people move here. Like it is like during you have, your typical summer in California, or let's say the spring, that's your winter in Florida. I mean, yes, it's always gonna be a little more humid. It's not dry. It's not a desert. It's not a Mediterranean climate. It's a tropical climate. But you get to really enjoy amazing weather, and you could have Christmas on the beach if you really wanted to, with warm water and beautiful weather. So it's something to take note of and to be aware of if you come to moving to Florida. So number 2, one of the second things that I really found when moving to Orlando was things to do. So if you're coming from California and you're watching this video, so I'm going to assume that you are, if you've always lived in California, like my wife did, you think that California has the most things to do. No other state can compare, right? And whatever reasons bring you to Orlando, I promise you there is more stuff to do. And hear me out, right? So let's say whether you're San Diego, let's say Southern California or anywhere, like you're like, well, we have Disneyland, we have Knott's Berry Farm, we have all these places where we can go do stuff, the outdoors, hiking, fishing, apparently. I mean, I think fishing's way better in Florida. Let me know in the comments below where you think fishing's better, but I think Florida has that one handled. So when coming to Orlando, there's just so much to do, especially having a family and 2 young kids. Anything that California has, Florida has, and more. Coming out here, we realized that all of a sudden we're like, well, we came out here, we have our script, we set aside the month, even initially, right? And let alone when we finished moving here and building our home, we realized that like, wow, there's Legoland, there's soon to be, Peppa Pig land, if your kids are super into that. We have, Universal, let alone like the things that you can do if it's an adult time, you guys want to go on a date and like have the options, and Top Golf in Tampa, which is, hour and a half away, which you think that's far. I promise you, it's not like California far. It's the traffic can be different if you pick the right time. So coming to Orlando, there's even like cheap trips, right? Like we went through, I remember there was one day where we didn't know what to do. And we were lucky enough to have friends in the area already. And they said, well, you know what, if you drive, like 45 minutes, there's a preserve that you can go through. And I forgot the name of me. If I remember, I'll put it in the video. But it's where you stayed in your car and you just drove through. It used to be old farmland from, a long time ago that they reflooded the way it should be for the environment. And you get to see alligators and natural habitat of Florida staying in your car. You just get to go through, and it's one of those days where it was raining, but what better way to spend a day where you're like, well, can't go outside necessarily, but we made the best of it. And in California, if it's raining, like, what are you gonna go do? Can't go to the beach, amusement parks, like, yeah, you could go, it's miserable. You could go outside, hiking, camping, still involves rain. There's nothing to do. But I found it's so much easier to find things to do having kids. And really, the kids took that road trip. We got to stop. We had some food. There's more opportunity for things to do, to where, like, I think in the next coming years and decade, like I don't think I'll ever stop having stuff to do. Just like California, Florida's a big state. You always go to Miami, Jacksonville, like there's all this old, and one thing the East Coast has that West Coast doesn't always have as much of, it's just history. And there's so many things that we're looking forward to doing, like seeing one of the oldest houses still standing in the US, and all these things that are here in the state. So that's one thing I think Orlando has over California, is just the ability to do stuff. And also, not to mention, that leads me into my third reason, is the cost, right? Like if you're looking at this, regardless of how much your income you have, I don't care if you have $1 million budget, it's going to go a lot farther. So one of the misconceptions I think actually getting into this between California and Florida is they think Florida, like automatically, like you're just saving so much money by moving there. You know, my budget goes faster, everything else goes faster. And, you know, it reminds me of when, you know, when we were coming out here to Orlando and we started to run the numbers, we realized really quick that, you know, it's not so much cheaper per se, and it's the barrier to entry for what level, how big of home and things to do are lower by far. The biggest thing is obviously is like what's your income level going to be making the jump to the States, because Florida is lower income unless you're obviously able to work from anywhere, and then you're just that leg up to where this is irrelevant for you. But let's say you're maintaining that same income, switching to Florida, one, your budget is going to stay the same. And really you have what we found amazing is when we came out here and we were able to find out really quick that compared to like in California, we're like, okay, we got to settle. We were always settling on something, whether it was, hey, like maybe we can't do all the amusement parks this year, or hey, you know, we want to get a home, like, okay, we have to get 1 bedroom less because obviously our budget only allows for this, but we need to live close to family and this and that. And making the decision to go to Florida, we realized very fast that when we, you know, finally made the decision to do new construction, and there's a lot of reasons we went into that, which can be another video, but we found really quick that like, wow, even staying at our budget, we have a home with extra bedrooms for guests that we don't even need to use, which to us was insane compared to coming from San Diego at the time. And we were able to be in a position to where our budget opened up, because now instead of having to go to Disney World or only having Disneyland, we were able to say, wow, we can actually take that same cost of Disneyland and have Legoland and SeaWorld or Universal and, you know, another number of other theme parks in 1 year to be able to say, you know, create a better life for our kids. And that's really what blew us away, is instead of fighting whatever, was having the ability to stress our budget and really just make things work and start enjoying life again. I mean, it's not a perfect situation. Like I said, you have the option to max your budget out, or most likely if you're coming from California, I promise you, you can actually live even below your budget if that's something you really wish, or you can max out and just really get the most of what, you know, your hard-earned work has gotten you. And I think that's something that really just blew me away with that difference between California and Orlando. Okay, fourth thing that I found with living in Orlando versus California was the fact that, okay, so let's take San Diego, for example, right? Like that's where I came from. When I first got to San Diego, and it was, I think 2014, right? I came from the country. I lived in the town, country, more cows than people, went through all that, grew up there, lived there. When I came to San Diego, if you know the area in California, you fit any city. I don't care if it's Los Angeles, somewhere in Riverside County, like I don't care where it is. You know what I'm talking about. You have a city, and then maybe like, you know, you have the center of the city, even an hour outside the city, it's still just a small city. Maybe some less name brand stores. Like you can't really get away from the cost. Like you're always having to pay a lot to live in country, but really you're not living in the country. You're just living in the outskirts of the city. And even if you're lucky enough to have houses in the country, like you're maxing out your budget and probably having to suffer somewhere else. So it's coming to Orlando. We found that in reality, because obviously it's an upcoming area, Central Florida, all overall, not just Orlando, it's up and coming, right? Everyone's moving there. We've all seen it. I mean, you're already making the decision. Obviously, you're watching this video. So coming to Orlando, I found that we were able to either choose in the city, whether it's Winter Garden, central into the city, like, you know, if you want to live in penthouse I don't care what it is. Like you're able to choose city life very easily. And really, it's still not even that crowded even if you do choose that. Or within 30 minutes outside the city center, like you could have an acre of land and still be super close to everything that a city would provide, but have the comfort of quote unquote like country living. Now, yes, is expansion pushing? Yeah, absolutely. But it's just nice that you can be in a position now to just secure your stake and have space to really enjoy time with you and your family without really giving up everything that you might have had to do in California, right? It's like not like you're trying to live next to the Salton Sea and have like a $40,000 house. It's an area where you can live comfortably, nice home, and still have everything that a city provides. And I think that was one of the amazing things that we got to realize making the switch and making that jump from California to Orlando. Okay, so my fifth and final thing that just blew me away in the difference between California and Orlando. So in making the move, we realized that obviously my wife's family, they're never leaving California. And if you're in that situation, I feel for you. It's not easy, but you're making the decision for your family. When we made that decision and we went to Orlando, we realized very quickly that flights are insanely cheap to go places. I mean, it's still flying. It's still not, the cheapest in the world. It's still expensive. But, flying from San Diego at the time, I mean, San Diego's not a cheap airport to fly out of. And if you're in that situation, you've ever had to do that, like it's always more expensive. And LA is a little bit cheaper always because it's just a bigger airport, more connections. But you're still spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars for round trip tickets across the country. In Orlando, during the cheapest month of the year we found for tickets, doing our research, in September, we found tickets, round trip for one ticket, $154 round trip to LA, and $190 round trip to San Diego. Obviously that fluctuates, and by the time this video or you watch it, it could be something completely different, especially the way things are now, getting always more expensive. But like that's still an insane, like I just couldn't believe it to her. That was like what sold us initially. Because even if we weren't going back home, because it's so hard with young kids to go on planes, being able to just say, hey, like, your mom wants to come out, no worries, here's a round trip ticket. And being able to do that and have it be so cheap relatively to be able to go back and forth, it was a no-brainer. And it just really solidified that this was the area for us to live in. Because while like if you're over here, you're living in a place where people love to vacation. Like, why isn't that something that's great? I mean, there's always the good and the bad, and there's always something you're giving up, and the weather and everything we just talked about that might just be, a cutoff for you, not to mention hurricanes. We didn't go into that too much. But being able to just travel back to California if you have family there for a low price, where you can, that's an easy number to budget in to your finances. It really just set the tone for why we chose this area. And again, like I said in the beginning of the video, if you love watching this, we have plenty of people reaching out to us all the time, looking to relocate in Orlando from all across the country, the world. So if that's you, call, text, we would love to help you. Without that, I will see you in the next video.